As I travel around the world and go in and out of airports and hotels, people are more receptive to come up and chat and talk because I've got these wow, cool wheels.
Okay.
I'm paralyzed from the neck down, but I'm completely in control of my own life. I make decisions about what I want.
It's not the same as having hands, but I have to say that it is quite simple because I can do most things with them.
It was so liberating. Like when I was walking, I felt like I walked 10 times better. Just having the technology that could keep up with me made me a more confident person.
Innovation is made possible by the people of NEC for over 30 years, providing computer, communications, and semiconductor technologies for communities and businesses throughout America. NEC, 148,000 people worldwide committed to the future.
As a concert violinist, I travel through airports around the world. Time and again, I find there are not enough wheelchairs, or those available are broken. When they work, wheelchairs these days don't have to be confining. They can be liberating. New technologies are making physical limitations largely irrelevant. I'm Itzhak Perlman. In this edition of People in Motion, you'll meet people who have used technology to create a new civil rights movement, to set world records in track and field. And you'll meet others who have invented technology that has pushed the limits for people with disabilities, both in the workplace as well as in sports.
I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, I'd rather be dead than be like you." Good morning, good morning. And they miss it so much because life is such a joy. There's so much to life if you're into it. There's so many reasons to die if you're not at all.
Ed Roberts has helped millions of people find a reason to live. He helped launch a civil rights movement for people with disabilities so they could live freely integrated in their communities, not shut away in institutions. But when he first contracted polio at the age of 14, that idea was a long way off. His mother, Zona Roberts, remembers all too well the doctor's attitude when he told her Ed would live.
The next morning I said to the doctor I was glad that he had survived, and he wanted to know why. Would I like to spend the rest of my life in an iron lung, and what it'd be like? The poor man was horrified.
Roberts himself did not want to live.
I decided to die in the beginning. People told me basically that I would have no life. And when you're in an iron lung and you're paralyzed from the neck down, in a hospital where their whole job is to save your life, you've got to be pretty creative to kill yourself.
Roberts starved himself down to 50 pounds, and then the last of his special duty nurses left her post.
The next day I decided to live and I started eating. And I know what the reason was. There is nothing in life if you're not in control of what happens to you. And I think that was when I began to realize that I had a choice over living and dying, and that I really wanted to live and to take control of my own life.
Except for 2 fingers, Roberts is paralyzed from the neck down. He spends much of his time in an iron lung. But from the beginning, he learned to sit in a wheelchair, and he learned to breathe with the help of a portable respirator, forcing air into his lungs. And he learned to challenge society's low expectations of himself and other people with disabilities. He decided that his body may be limited, but his mind was not. The kid who had lived for baseball turned seriously to school, attending high school by phone hookup.
So I can remember wheeling down this for the first time in 1962, and there was a demonstration.
Roberts convinced a skeptical University of California to admit him. He became the first severely disabled student to attend. He had to live in Cowell Infirmary, the only place big enough for his 800-pound iron lung. Newspapers headlined the conventional wisdom. He proved them wrong, eventually earning a master's degree. And soon other quadriplegics joined him on campus. They called themselves the Rolling Quads and began inventing a new world for themselves.
We realized that we could change some things. The first thing we do is change our own attitudes to ourselves. Be proud of who we were and what we were. And go out and change it for others and for ourselves. The most important part of that is working with other people. Moving away from your own problems to help somebody else. And that liberated me. When I realized I could help others, it made me a lot freer to help myself.
At the university, the Rolling Quads literally opened the door for other students like them. They remade the Berkeley campus into one of the most physically accessible in the country, with a program designed to aid students with disabilities. Hundreds have earned their degrees since then, without living like patients in the infirmary.
What's it like living here now? Is it very different?
Naomi Armenta is a
I
senior.
guess so. It is pretty much the only place I've ever been where I can be kind of anonymous as the disabled person. You know, people say, oh, the woman in the wheelchair, and they don't automatically know it's me. There are people around here in wheelchairs that I don't know. So, I mean, that's kind of nice in a way because it takes the pressure off. You know, you don't always have to be an activist for yourself.
Roberts and his friends realized that access to education was only a beginning. They wanted to leave the campus, have jobs, and participate in their communities like everyone else.
And to recognize that we didn't want to live in an institution. I remember one dean at the university said, oh, you'll finish your PhD, and then you'll live in a nursing home. And I said, no, that's not the plan. We're here to change that whole idea.
Their new idea they called independent living.
Independent living is a psychological idea much more than a physical concept. Let my head down a little bit more. I'm paralyzed from the neck down, but I'm completely in control of my own life. I make decisions about what I want. And when you begin to believe that, it's very empowering and powerful. And then it becomes, it's almost, when it catches on with other people, they see, well, if he can do that, why can't I?
They set up a place to spread that word and provided job training, housing referral, and skills to live ordinary lives. The center turned Berkeley into the first city with curb cuts, providing people with the most basic access to independent living. There are now hundreds of these centers throughout the world.
Our whole philosophy was, do not make other people with disabilities dependent on you. And our whole professional system is set up that way. Always ask, what do you want to do? Help people learn how to make their own decisions in their life. And you know what? It's that simple.
In 1975, Roberts had caught the eye of Governor Jerry Brown, who put him in charge of the California Department of Rehabilitation and its 2,200 employees. Along the way, Roberts had shattered another myth.
I was always told that I could never drive a power wheelchair, which meant that any time I needed to move, I had to ask someone. And one thing you become very leery of is asking for too much. So you cut out part of your life, the things you'd like to do.
Like falling in love.
And all of a sudden, it became ridiculously inconvenient to have my attendant pushing me around. It was a real hindrance to intimacy. And being highly motivated, I decided to hell with all those comments, and I couldn't do it. I needed it for my life, and they got me in a power chair. And all we had to do is turn the controller around so I could pull. And I bounced off the walls a few times, and she jumped on my lap, and we run off in the sunset.
Roberts eventually married and fathered a son, Lee, now 16 years old.
Hey, thank you.
Roberts is divorced, but shares custody.
This is Access, Lee.
This is like awesome.
I was told I would never be able to have a child. And it was one of those myths again. I mean, it just took finding the right woman in the right circumstances and getting together. And we had a kid. And he's totally the joy of my life. He teaches me every day that disability is irrelevant because I'm Dad. I'm his father. And you can be a father in a wheelchair, or you can be a father walking around. Oh, I know if I hesitate, I lose. You can be fathered in a lot of ways. Oh, no, routine fly.
In 1983, Roberts co-founded and became president of the World Institute on Disability, a think tank which focuses on disability policy in an international arena. While there, he was awarded a MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant. In the national arena, one of the disability rights movement's greatest legislative achievements was the Americans with Disabilities Act. It bars discrimination in employment and guarantees access to public buildings, transportation, and communication services.
And today's legislation brings us closer to that day when no Americans will ever again be deprived of their basic guarantee of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
But laws are one thing. Their implementation is another. Roberts was reminded of that one day on a visit to Washington, D.C. He was scheduled to appear live on CNN TV. The man who was instrumental in the first curb cuts in the nation missed the interview. Why? Right in front of the Capitol building, he had to search for a curb cut.
I think as we train professionals, architects, and others who work on this, they need to understand better what barrier-free design really means. It's good for everybody. When you put a curb cut in, not only can you get around, but so can strollers and all kinds of other things on wheels get around. So when we make change, it's not for a large group.
Real health care for all!
There are still other obstacles. They want the billions of dollars spent on shutting people away in institutions to be spent on attendance and assisted technology. Then, more of them can become productive, tax-paying members of their community at less cost to society and to themselves.
Right now, 75% of us are unemployed. Staggering figure, 75% of us. We have to show our society that disability doesn't affect work. If you're motivated to work, no matter how disabled, you can do a good job. You might need a little technology. You might need a little help, like personal assistance, but you can do the job.
There are many besides Roberts showing that they can do the job, and it doesn't necessarily require expensive technology. Hale Zukas is a policy analyst for the World Institute. He's been a major player in access to public transportation, including making elevators operable without the help of an attendant.
I need to know what dates you were actually in Arlington and in D.C.
Sometimes he needs an interpreter. Sometimes he needs a conversation board to express himself. But he's shown that, like streets without curb cuts, those are limitations that can be overcome. Yanina Saikov became totally blind as a young adult. Each day she comes to work past a chirping street light. It lets her know when to cross. Those lights are partly the work of the Center for Independent Living. She manages WITNET, which puts people with disabilities on the information superhighway, and her job has been made possible by a talking computer. But for all the progress that's been made in legislation and technology, society's myths still hold fast.
And our number one issue is still old attitudes towards us. And those old attitudes see us as helpless and unable. And disability can make you very strong and very able.
Okay, we're back. If you wish to talk to Ed Roberts, a victim of polio.
Not a victim.
Not a victim,
Not a victim. No, I think that's a real misperception.
What is the correct perception?
I was disabled by polio, but I am not a victim of polio in any sense of the word.
Technology, Roberts thinks, can level the playing field and help change those attitudes.
When I got my power chair, I didn't realize how much it would change me and the way I was perceived. When you're pushed up, people talk to the other person. And all of a sudden, people had to deal directly with me. Not only could I go wherever I wanted to go, when I wanted to go, but people didn't overlook me. They might look above me, but they had to deal with me directly, and that was very powerful.
At a march on Washington, disability rights leaders and congressional leaders alike sought him out.
What Ed Roberts has done, I think, for the disability community is he has gone to lawmakers and leaders in legislation and in the business community to show that even someone who is severely disabled, like Ed, can be mobile, He's smart as a whip. He can get a job done. He can organize. He can communicate effectively. And there's no reason why he should be discriminated against.
A lot of years ago, I decided that people were going to stare at me, and it was a lot better if I decided I was a star rather than a helpless cripple. We can change a lot of our own attitudes that way.
For all his accomplishments, Roberts likes to say that he's not a superhero, just a role model, living proof that severely disabled people can be masters of their own destinies.
Hey, we are here, and we are not going away.
At age 19, Sarah Reinertsen has won dozens of awards and medals in races all over the world. Those who know her say it's partly her drive, partly her talent, and partly some very advanced technology. Sarah was born with a condition which stunted the growth of her left leg. When she was 7, her doctors decided to amputate.
And I think I was very upset when it was actually happening. Like, oh my gosh, they're taking more of my leg away, and I'm already missing part of my leg. They're going to take what I have away from me.
But her doctors and her parents explained that she would be able to get a better prosthesis, one which would make walking easier, as well as allow her to bend her knee. Better, at that time, was a heavy leg attached by a belt, which pinched, and it had a rubber foot.
I don't know how much it weighs, but when I was 7 years old, this felt like a lot. And it was really noisy. Every time I walked, it just goes like that, ever so slightly, and you hear this clunk. And that's when the big joke in my family was how I could never be a burglar, because they'd always hear me clunking around.
Despite the clumsiness, Sarah decided to begin running competitively. Her first race was here at the New York State Games for the physically challenged. She was 11 years old.
I think it was because it was the one sport people told me not to do. Or it was the thing that I was not to do. Oh, why don't you go into art or music or, you know, you write really well. But it was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to do a sport.
Hi, how are you?
So that's why I did it. It was because it was the one thing that everyone was like, she's missing her leg. She can't do that. And I wanted to prove them otherwise.
She did prove otherwise. Even though her leg nearly fell off, she won. But it turned out her gold medal wasn't the real prize that day. It was the two people she met there.
Take one athlete down to the starting line there with Patty.
Prosthetist Mike Joyce and Patty Rosbach, a nurse who runs an amputee sports program for kids and young adults.
When I first met Sarah, she was in a, dare I say it, a very primitive leg, which was really holding her back. And her parents really had not been able to find anything that was any better. And I think that finding better technology for her was one of the big leaps in her progress.
They were talking about the suction sock that I wouldn't have to wear a belt. They were talking about these knees, these hydraulic knees that would like adjust to the activity that I was going to do. They were talking about these feet that would give me energy back and make me feel like I was springing, you know, instead of like using all my energy just to take one step.
The foot they were talking about was the FlexFoot. FlexFoot is made from carbon graphite, the same material developed by the aerospace industry. It's strong, yet light. It's bendable and behaves like a human foot, storing 95% of the energy that a person puts into it.
So that means if I weigh 150 pounds and I step on my foot, I can actually store, 140 pounds of energy that I'm going to get out of the foot as I come off my toe. And that 140 pounds is going to push my leg and push me forward, as opposed to just sitting there behind me, waiting for me to pick it up and put it in front of me again.
Van Philip should know. He not only uses the FlexFoot, he invented it. After a water skiing accident, Van had stumbled along on an artificial foot made of wood and rubber. Movement was slow, tiring, and painful. He changed his college major to prosthetics and started researching a foot that wouldn't feel like a ball and chain. What he came up with, he called FlexFoot. It was a long way from the prosthetic feet of his past, which was so heavy and passive that they made the simple act of walking a tiring chore.
Weight is paramount for amputees. You put a heavy prosthesis, a heavy foot on somebody, and they're going to walk slow. They're going to be trudging along, having to drag this foot along.
Today, about 15 companies are manufacturing energy-storing prosthetic feet. The design of FlexFoot allows for movement that closely resembles human function.
And so what you see is a very smooth progression of the patient landing on the foot, rolling over the foot, coming off the foot. Whereas prosthetic feet of the past, you basically landed on the foot and you came off the foot. The toe levers are very short, so you couldn't take a full stride length. And then they looked awkward, and they were awkward. I used to wear one.
It was so liberating, and I could do everything. I mean, I felt like when I was walking, I felt like I walked 10 times better. I felt good just inside. In some ways, I think the technology gave me a new confidence. Just having the technology that could keep up with me made me a more confident person.
Sarah has different legs for different sports, and she has what she calls an everyday leg with a cosmetic cover. The running and day-to-day legs consist of a FlexFoot attached to a hydraulic knee.
You know, I've always told Sarah that whatever you want to do in life, just try it. And all this technology has enabled her to try things, okay? And that's really important. You don't want to feel like you're an outsider, you're an outcast, you can't do these things because you wear an artificial leg. You want to say, hey, I want to try that.
With the new technology, Sarah went on to become a world-class athlete. She set a world record in 1988 and in 1992 at the Paralympics in Barcelona. She says some of her drive comes from society's low expectations of people with disabilities.
In some ways, I had to overachieve to prove myself more. And my parents never made me feel that way, but I think that in society, it makes it more acceptable to be disabled. I'm disabled, but I've gone to the Paralympics and I can run track and I do it in this time and I've won all these medals and, you know, I'm doing all these other extraordinary things because of it. So I think in some ways people say it's okay.
For women, Sarah believes competitive sports have a special value.
When you grow up, or being a woman and being an amputee, there's a lot of body image things that go into missing your leg. You don't feel as comfortable with yourself. You don't feel as beautiful. You kind of feel weird in this dress. You're not comfortable wearing the short dresses or what might be in style. You can't wear those kind of shoes. But I think being in sports, you feel more of a confidence. You feel equal. You feel fit.
This is Sarah's first race and shortly after she started college 9 months ago. The annual National Amputee Summer Games feature elite-level athletes now training for a spot at the 1996 Paralympics. But there are others who are competing for the first time.
I kick my leg out, and with the heel, and I balance on this leg for a split moment and then swing that out, okay? Okay. So it's kind of like that. I'm kicking my leg out, carrying it through doing it.
You want me to try that, right?
When you come together for a disabled track meet, it isn't just the celebration of sportsmanship in sports. I think you're also kind of celebrating the commonality that you share in your disability, that you both have the same struggles and you kind of can talk about your disability, how do you handle when you have a sore, what do you do in this case, what kind of foot do you use, what kind of knee do you like. You got it, that's it, just, you got it.
The Little Mermaids. I got this made because I wanted to make my disability fun for my kids.
Dennis Oler is also a world champion in amputee sports. He was about to sign a professional soccer contract when he lost his leg in a car accident. He thought his athletic career was over. Then he saw people like himself running competitively. Dennis found a sport he could excel in, one he'd never even tried before his accident. This was not what he thought having a disability was all about. Now he tries to raise the expectations of kids who are amputees.
This is the moose.
He tells them how he trained with Olympian Carl Lewis, running just 1.8 seconds slower than Lewis at the 1988 Paralympics.
And that's going to kick my leg out. So I'm using my hydraulic knee, yes, but not really as much as I'm using the housing unit.
He gives running clinics with his business partner, Todd Schaffhauser, who in 1989 set a world record for above-the-knee amputees in the 100-meter dash.
I don't have to say anything. You can line up a group of 100 amputees who have never run before in their life, and you put Todd and myself out there and just run past them, you just see the expression, the way people light up. It's like the sky opens up and the sun comes out, and it's just like, my life is going to be okay.
A young man from Poland couldn't understand Todd and Dennis's words, but he understood perfectly what they could do.
Does he want to run?
You said, chce biegać?
Ja chciał biegać.
Yeah.
Dennis and Todd like to encourage kids to believe the Paralympics are within their reach.
Paralympics. You, for Poland.
Athletes keep setting new records there with continued advancements in technology.
There was no way that I'd ever be able to run these kind of times on a conventional foot. And there's a bigger picture to that, too, because it's not just athletics.
Oh, I'd love you to come down in May.
I mean, you're talking about giving somebody who lost a leg the ability to walk the way they walked before they lost their leg, and when they take a step and feel the bounce in the toe as they get off the toe, that's their foot back again.
Some prosthetists believe the flex foot has too much energy storage for the non-athlete and like to recommend an alternative. But prosthetist Mike Joyce disagrees. He says 90% of his patients are not athletes. Like most of the amputee population, his average patient is older and has heart and circulation problems. He says that's the person who really needs a lot of energy storage.
He needs it more than the athlete needs it. He needs the benefit of technology more than anybody else because he has diminished muscle and diminished energy to work with. So the more you can do for him, the better off you're helping him.
Animal! 400, is that the first time you ever ran a 400? I bet you love that race, huh?
Dennis hasn't competed in a year and is recovering from a back injury. So he doesn't do as well as he'd hoped in the National Amputee Games, but he still wins a gold medal in his class.
Are we faster than the majority of people in the United States and around the world? No question. Are we at 95%? No question. Is there 5% of the people out there that are faster than us, like Carl Lewis's and other people? No question. And we'll never probably be at that level. To be slower than only 5% of the population out there, that's not bad considering you're missing your leg or missing both your legs.
Sarah gets ready with a last-minute tune-up. In this 100-meter dash, she will have to run in the same heat with a 10-year-old boy and the only other woman entered. She's a below-the-knee amputee, which gives her an advantage, so they will not be competing against each other. Each is in a different class. Sarah comes across the finish line, not realizing how well she's done.
Still the fastest AK in the world, 18.5. That beats your world record, right?
Oh, I'm tired. I wasn't expecting to do real well coming down here. And I feel kind of shocked, but happy.
When you have a physical disability, you feel like the Jamaica that wants to go to the Winter Olympics. And everyone's saying, no, you can't. What are you, crazy? You've never seen snow. You don't know what it's like. And you're right. I've never lived in an able-bodied world. I don't know how you do the things you do. But this is what I know. And this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to make it.
Marilyn Hamilton fell out of the sky in a hang gliding accident and landed in a wheelchair when she was 29 years old. She likes to say a person's wound is the same place where their passion is born.
Are you seeing it all back there? Or am I
Hamilton's passion and dreams not only pushed the limits of technology for herself, they ended up changing the entire wheelchair industry.
Where's Meryl? Right there. That's me.
She was an active, adventurous child.
With the ponytail.
As a teenager, she was Raisin Queen of Dinuba, a small agricultural town in California. She became a high school teacher, and her love of adventure drew her to hang gliding. But one day, she forgot to fasten a safety latch before she took off.
After the first step, the glider just ripped out of my hands, and I was holding on to the bottom of it and, you know, skimming a couple 100 feet, and would have loved to have gotten away from the mountain so that I could have thrown the parachute, but it just wasn't in the cards that day, and I found myself lying there on the side of the mountain.
Hamilton was rushed to the hospital, where days later she learned of her condition.
After the surgery, my neurologist came in and just said, "You're never going to walk again." A little crass, but it was direct.
Her uncle, Bill Hamilton, came to visit. He was a successful businessman who'd been quadriplegic most of his life.
He knew what I had in store for me, and yet at the same time, he would always tell me, "Go after your dreams. You can do anything. This is not the end. You just got to do whatever you choose to do and not let anything get in the way."
What she found getting in her way were the wheelchairs then on the market.
I went through 3 wheelchairs in the first year, and they were just disgusting. They were awkward, they were cumbersome, they were heavy, they were sick. Absolutely sick. And, you know, I was trying to get well, and this piece of equipment that was my legs was not allowing me any dignity to do that.
Historically, wheelchairs were symbols of confinement and illness. Their bulkiness and size often predestined the users to lives as invalids, shut away in institutions. The stigma was so pronounced that even though President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was unable to walk, he never allowed himself to be photographed in a wheelchair. This is said to be the one exception. By the 1930s and 40s, companies were designing lighter chairs, but lighter meant 40 to 50 pounds instead of 90. They were not good enough for people like Marilyn Hamilton, who wanted to have the same full life in a wheelchair as she'd had out of one.
And so she was holding on to the back, and I'm going, "Boy, it's a little tough here, Ariel. Can you skate with me back there instead of just holding on?" It just took a lot of energy just to put the chair in the car, get out of the car, go grocery shopping, just do the normal functions of daily living, and it was a real chore.
That's a new hope.
In those days, Hamilton was buying her chairs from Wayne Kunishiga.
We can even make it purple for you.
She was like the best customer and the worst customer, because Marilyn wanted you to always bring her the newest, best stuff, but she really was frustrated in that it was never good enough. We'd find the lightest platform that fit her the best, but then we'd still have to bring in wheels from one place. We'd get upholstery from another place so that it looked good, and we'd end up kind of like making a hot rod wheelchair.
It was very awkward for me because people treated me so funny. I knew I really wasn't any different. I just had a different form of transportation. I was rolling around, but it was really awkward. It was very annoying. There was a lot of pity and fear and anxiety.
She had plenty of company. After World War II, medical advances were allowing more people to survive accidents and illnesses, and the wheelchair population grew. Technology gradually started to change as a new crop of wheelchair athletes began tinkering with their own everyday chairs for a competitive edge. Hamilton knew nothing about technology. She just knew there had to be something better.
What I couldn't understand was how I could have a hang glider that was a toy, that was something that was for fun, that had more colors and more technology built into it as a recreational piece of equipment than my legs.
She turned to Don Hellman and Jim Okimoto, who were hang glider designers.
I have a motto that if you're going to whine, be sure to whine to someone who can make a difference.
In a little garage workshop, Okimoto and Hellman made a difference.
What they were able to do was come up with something that functioned, that was lightweight, that was high performance, that was portable, that had fun colors attached to it, that just made you feel comfortable. Hey, ladies. Instead of being sick, you felt well all of a sudden in a wheelchair.
In her new chair, Hamilton returned to sports with a vengeance. She went on to win the National Wheelchair Tennis Championships in singles and doubles, and the National Disabled Ski Championships 6 times. Along the way, others saw her custom-made chair and wanted one just like it. Hellman, Okimoto, and Hamilton started a company called Motion Designs. Eric Vielbig became the first employee.
We didn't have any large budgets for marketing, advertising, etc., and to a certain extent, Marilyn was that advertising. She was somewhat of a rolling billboard for the company.
You could put a tennis ball dispenser in it, so up through that center tube.
Sheila Delaney, another original employee, remembers just what an attention-getter Hamilton was. There was the time Hamilton was addressing a business group and backed off the makeshift stage.
Within moments before the audience could gasp or you could get up and react, she had 2 people pick her and her chair up. She's back on the stage, and she's in front of the microphone with this beaming smile saying, well, I always said if you can't stand up, stand out.
Like many of their chair designs today, early models were made out of lightweight but sturdy aluminum instead of steel. They were half the weight of the old chairs. They came in vivid colors. Even the name was something new for a wheelchair. Quickie signaled movement and action, and the owners played off the double entendre. The first design had been primarily a sports chair. In 1984, they put many of those sports features into a folding chair for the everyday user. The 3 owners sold the company in 1986 to Sunrise Medical. Hamilton stayed on, becoming Senior Vice President of Marketing, a role Quickie's president thinks has always been a key to the company's success.
Hi, Cynthia. I'm Tom O'Donnell from Quickie. All right?
She made people believe that it was at least worth trying to find out whether users wanted to try that product. And whenever anybody said no, she could look them right square in the eye and said, it works for me. I think it'll work for everyone else. So why not give people the opportunity to try and buy?
This little one is wonderful. The little Quickie kids.
Quickie, based in Fresno, California, still turns out lightweight, easily maneuverable, high-performance chairs. Now it designs for a greater range of ages, activities, and disabilities. There are children's chairs, power wheel chairs. They're still adjustable and customized to the individual user with seat, back height, armrest, and even color made to fit the person instead of the person fitting the chair. The newest power chair can even hop curbs, as this able-bodied Quickie tester shows.
Yeah, I was out riding with the kids yesterday. It was incredible on my bike.
Hamilton continues to give feedback.
REL on the back of it and pulling her, and I really liked where the gears were placed because it's so easy to change them as you're going along.
For Hamilton, the chair has done what she wanted it to do. It's made her life and others simpler and more active.
You can just pop the tires off and put them in the car and put the chair in the car real quickly, but it's so much easier that all of a sudden, instead of taking all of your energy to get in and out and just to live, you can take that energy and live your life and enjoy your life with your family and your friends and working and just doing all the things that everyone chooses to do.
Watch out.
Get out of there.
Kanishiga, a vice president at Quickie, played basketball both before and after these new sports chairs were around. He says what they can do now was unthinkable in the past.
And in basketball, we can maneuver, and we're more stable in the chairs that we're using today. So the game's a whole lot faster, and it's a whole lot more fun than it was in 1982.
We can actually take and customize depending on what position they're playing. We can customize the height and the seat position. We can angle them in at a very steep angle. So depending on the level of disability and the kind of disability, we can really customize to that individual and what their talents and abilities are.
From the beginning, the company also used its advertising to change the image of wheelchair users.
We added people. And people doing a variety of things, so all of a sudden you could see people, real people in their lives, and then it would give people clues to, oh, I could do that, which they never imagined before.
You really have to be able to use yourself from a variety of positions. So
They certainly never imagined Ron Scanlon, who teaches self-defense in martial arts to the physically disabled and able-bodied, and holds a 10th degree black belt in Kung Fu Sansu. Hamilton is now coordinating the company's sponsorship of the 1996 Paralympics in Atlanta. She says sports technology for people with disabilities is about more than winning medals.
Ultimately, what it translates is to job creation. If we can take businesses and show them that there's wonderful athletes and people out there in the world because they're so high profile, then that trickles down into the everyday job market for people with disabilities and others feeling comfortable around them.
That's always been part of her mission.
As I travel around the world and go in and out of airports and hotels, people are more receptive to come up and chat and talk because I've got these wow, cool wheels. And it's just a different feeling instead of wanting to turn and look away or feel uncomfortable.
Does anybody have a question for me? Yes, what's your question?
How do you go to the star?
Changing attitudes is why Quickie sends J.D. England to classrooms. He's a self-described sit-down comedian.
I am letting them see that there are a lot of people like myself with disabilities that just enjoy life. And hopefully that'll stick in their head. And I think it's just a wonderful way to teach through to the children, because other ones in the next few years are going to help change attitudes.
What you learn from Marilyn has really nothing to do with disability. What you learn from Marilyn is that it's okay to dream, and it's okay to dream real big dreams.
Ladies and gentlemen, my friend and the lady that got me in a purple chair, Marilyn Hamilton.
And it's okay to say, I can, when others say you can't.
So now, we have terrific wheelchairs. They're extensions of ourselves. They really do break down barriers. Who would imagine that you'd have totally customized wheelchairs filling your needs and wants, wonderful colors, and styles? Who would have imagined a wheelchair that would be an accessory? And who would have thought that wheelchairs would be this fun?
Luca Christo could have been any wounded soldier returning home from any war in history. But what makes Christo's story different is a pair of prosthetic hands. Christo was just 24 when he left his small village in Bosnia. The local militia sent him to guard a neighboring town. Early on the second morning, he saw some enemy soldiers approaching his hilltop position. He was firing his rifle when a friend yelled, "Bomb."
My friend on the left still didn't know it was right next to him, and I was still holding my rifle. I threw it down on the ground and grabbed the grenade with both my hands so that I could throw it up over my back, away from us. And just as I was holding it in front of me, it exploded, and I looked at my hands and I couldn't see them.
All of Christo's fingers had been blown off. He received medical care in Croatia, but it wasn't enough.
This will be a tough case, right?
Oh, yeah, very tough.
The International Organization for Migration has helped hundreds of victims of war like Christo, matching them up with doctors and hospitals willing to provide free medical treatment. For Christo, just buying prosthetic hands, arms, and the fittings would have cost $60,000. Charles Courtney is a prosthetist in Maryland. He convinced a manufacturer to donate the prosthetic hands, and he agreed to do the costly fittings and training for free.
In a way, I was excited because he said I would be able to do the things I'd done before in terms of work and life. And I was very happy that he comforted me in telling me that, yes, I would be able to do that.
At the first fitting, Christo made it clear that Courtney had given him more than some advanced technology.
He picked up a pencil, he wrote his name, and drew me a flower.
The idea that came to me, because when a flower is young, it's very beautiful, but with age it starts to sag and get old,
and then people throw it away and don't look at it. And C.J. Courtney looked at that flower even when it was old and still wanted to help.
I think it looks very good.
He said, well, how's the teacher? He's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Christo lived in Virginia with the Tadin family for most of his American stay. Maya Tadin left Croatia with her husband 25 years ago. Their children, Felicia, Don, and Ivan, can speak Christo's language. Maya Tadin remembers the first time she saw Christo.
I was very surprised to see him coming from Croatia in the condition that he was in. It was almost shock to me because when I left the country, I always remember boys being as healthy, happy. Every healthy boy is, and when I saw him, it just hit me the tragedy of the war and how it really affected him. He was very quiet. He was more within himself. He would talk very softly, no smile, very serious.
The hands changed that.
He got his smile back, and he has his jokes back, and he is normal in so many ways that that's how I want to see young men to be his age.
The prostheses work with two sensors. One sensor touches a muscle on the inside of his forearm. The other sensor touches a muscle on the outside of his forearm. The muscle sets off an electrical impulse. The sensor sends that to a battery, which activates the motor in his prosthetic hand. Each day, Christo must recharge the batteries. When he flexes his muscle on the outside, the hand opens. When he flexes the muscle on the inside, the hand closes.
It's not the same as having hands, but I have to say that it is quite simple because of how they are, and I can do most things with them.
In Bosnia, Christo worked assembling furniture at a department store. Courtney has been helping him relearn those skills. It's not easy adjusting to this new technology.
There would be some people, I would think, that would just fall apart and say, it's too tough, I can't do it. Luke is just the opposite. He wants to be able to do the things that he wants to do.
It's not common having two myoelectric prostheses. With just one, a person can rely on his sound hand. Two require a lot of practice. You can do the most delicate of tasks or exert a lot of force. Learning this balance was one of Christo's first adjustments.
I became aware of this in the beginning, of having to be careful how hard I grab things, and especially when I'm lifting glasses, I have to watch how hard I pick it up with my prosthetic arm. But now, as time goes on, I have to think less and less as I've become accustomed to being sensitive to how hard I grab glasses.
9-year-old Ivan remembers those early days.
Well, when he started like grabbing me and it got really tight, so I started like yelling while he was...
At first he couldn't control the hand. When he was playing as normal, but then he grabbed him and...
yeah, he didn't know his own strength.
Luca did not know how to stop it, so they both got scared.
All that has changed.
That's what Luca taught me.
Christo is now in perfect control. Prosthetic limbs developed out of wartime injuries. This is what Christo might have worn if he'd returned from the American Civil War or even World War I. Russian scientists invented myoelectric prostheses in the late 1940s, but it's only in the last 15 years that these devices have become so advanced.
When he thinks open, it'll open. When he thinks close, it will close.
Christo traveled to the United States in December 1993 with Maria Lubich, a volunteer aide from Croatia. At first, she was his hands.
Good morning. How are you all this morning?
The explosion that damaged his hands also fractured his leg. He was treated at Inova Mount Vernon Hospital in Northern Virginia. Later, he came here regularly for physical therapy. Just as he mastered the use of his prostheses, he's gone far in healing his leg.
We started at 42 degrees about 4 months ago, so it's almost doubled. Yes, very.
Maya Tadine and her husband have fed him, helped clothe him, and opened their home to him. But it was the children who gave him back something he thought he'd never have again.
The children helped a lot because they're growing and they have fun. And then so I have fun with them, and there's a lot of happiness. That happiness that you have from them, it's not the same as you get from older people.
From the beginning, other members of the Catholic Croatian Church also reached out to Christo during his recovery and adjustment. They brought him and another young Bosnian soldier into their community and helped them feel less strange in a strange land. They gave them a sense of this country. His religion has sustained him.
It has helped me understand the reality of that is the way it is, that you just have to go on.
Now, this is quite unique for unbuttoning a shirt and so forth, that he can do this.
It could have been difficult for Christo to return to Bosnia with these high-tech hands, but Courtney arranged for a company nearby in Germany to donate them. And Christo can get spare parts in Croatia. They do sometimes break down. Courtney's also gotten him a set of backup hands.
Those were spares.
This is his final visit with Courtney before he takes off for Croatia tonight.
Maybe someday I get to Bosnia and see you.
Absolutely. I hope you can make it, because I would like that very much.
Since he was determined to return to Bosnia, Christo did not learn many English words while he was here. Only what he found most important.
Thank you. You have a nice, safe trip, okay? And you take care of yourself. Stay out of trouble over there.
Thank you for Croatia, for my space.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for my Luca. Thank you for Croatia.
Now he must begin his goodbyes to the Tadines. They'll be moving back to Croatia soon, so the parting isn't too difficult.
I feel that I'm helping Luca, I'm helping also my country through him. And that's the only way I can sort of feel part of gratitude towards all those boys and soldiers and people who suffer so much, that I can give this little.
He taught us that just because that you have a disability doesn't mean that you have to be like lowered or you can't do certain things. It's just normal.
I think this is a gift from God, I think. Just because he gave us, you know, we're more together than before. Because we all helped him out in different ways, and he helped us a lot. So, greater spirit, I guess. Yeah.
It's evident how far he's come when you see the wheelchair he arrived in. For now, it's a toy. Christo is bringing it back to Croatia for someone in need, and there will be many.
I told him now to be ready to accept his friends without hands and legs and part of their body missing. And I said, you're not going to be the only one.
There'll be other differences when he returns home. His closest brother was killed near the same place where Christo was injured, and he realizes there could be fighting again.
My goal, which has motivated me during my stay here, has been to return to try to live the life I lived before. And if I return and there's fighting, then I would try to do whatever I could.
And what about picking up a rifle again?
If I have to learn, I think I will learn. If that's the situation, I'll try. Not just for me, but for my mother and my father and my sister and my neighbor and for everyone.
But for the most part, Luca Christo has another picture of the future.
My goal is to try to get a job and just to be independent, to be able to do the basic things that any person needs on my own. That way, I can do things on my own and won't need to depend on other people and be a burden to them. and I think eventually I won't need help from anyone.
Innovation is made possible by the people of NEC, for over 30 years providing computer, communications, and semiconductor technologies for communities and businesses throughout America. NEC, 148,000 people worldwide committed to the future.